Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in again. Today's topic is one that will probably make a lot of you guys happy because I get this question potentially more than anything else. I get it for sure the most off topic. And what I mean by that is if I did a video on musky fishing, I'll get questions about this. If I do a video on rod building, I get questions on this. What's the topic? BFS. BFS, guys, is one of the things that has taken the bass fishing world by storm, and it's a topic that I get asked about all the time on what my thoughts are. So before I get into that, I'm just going to remind you that if you want to support the channel, go into my description, click the link to my store, buy some Matt Steffen fishing apparel, wear it around proudly, spread the word that way. It's a good way to help support the channel. Also, if you're looking for lake breakdowns, go into the description, click the Fish the Moment link. That'll take you to the lake breakdowns that myself, Johnny Schultz, and Randy Blockett have done. I've got a bunch of spring lakes done for the North Country. I'll be starting here to do a bunch of the summer lakes for the North Country. So if you're looking for a lake, go check that out. It's a good way to break down your lakes in your local area. And I think that's why I get asked all the time about BFS. The Bait Finesse System, the ability to use bait casting gear in ultra finesse situations. Being that I live in the North Country, we have super clear water, lots of presentations that require light line. It's something we do here for smallmouth all the time. So the question to me is, what are my thoughts on it? Well, I got to break it down a little bit more, just to give a little bit more background for some of you. There's a little discussion regarding where this came from. I've heard people say it's strictly a bass fishing thing. I've heard other people say it came from the trout fishing community. In either case, I believe it did originate in Japan and has since kind of come over to the United States, where people are applying these specially made reels and rods to fish bait casting gear with super light line and super light lures. Regardless of where it came from, it's definitely better equipment from a bait casting standpoint to allow you to fish what you normally would not be able to fish with bait casting gear. That's the biggest thing here. If you want to use light line and small baits on bait casting gear, there is no question that the BFS systems that are out there and that continue to come out are the best way to go. I still argue, though, that it may not be the best way to present those techniques because you do have other presentations out there. So when the question is brought up, do you use a BFS system? My first question right back is, what are the main advantages? And the main advantages that continue to come up, I get three. The first is that I don't like using spinning gear. I like using bait casting gear. That is a very, very legitimate reason. If you're not comfortable with spinning gear and you want to use finesse tactics, the BFS rod and reels that are out there are going to increase your finesse presentations with bait casting gear. Hands down, that is very much approved on my hand. The second question is, do you like to, or you can cast better and present your bait better and further with the BFS system over other presentations? Well, that I would argue with, because I do feel like I can cast every bit as accurate with a spinning rod as I can a bait casting rod, regardless of whether it's a normal bait casting rod or a BFS system. And the reason for that is potentially because I feel like I'm very comfortable with spinning gear. There are a lot of people out there that are not nearly as comfortable with spinning gear. So, that really comes down to the individual. I grew up fishing spinning gear. Half the rods that I own and I use on a regular basis are spinning rods. So I feel like I can skip a spinning rod even better than I can skip a bait casting rod. So if I feel like I have that advantage, I'm going to be able to put my spinning gear in the exact same place I could do it with a BFS system. And I think I could do it easier with less problems, where you're not going to potentially still get backlashes and issues that you run into with bait casting gear. I think you guys have seen, if you watch some of my previous videos, I did a video on fishing the micro chatterbait. It was my micro chatterbait review, the first time I've used one, and I was skipping around that 1/8 ounce chatterbait with no problem at all, putting it into places that I could put, a half ounce jig. But it's also the same places I could have been using that bait on spinning gear. So I don't know that I feel like just because I'm using a BFS system, that means I'm going to be able to cast further and put my bait into better places. It may mean I can cast further again compared to other bait casting gear, but I do think you're still going to get better distance with spinning gear. So it's up to the angler to have that accuracy with the spinning gear to get the bait back into those places that you want it to go. Another case that I hear about is people say I can present the bait in a more natural manner than I can with other techniques. And what you mean by that is if you pitch a bait back under a tree, you can make that bait fall without a splash. You definitely can with bait casting gear present your bait in a much more natural, uninvasive manner, meaning you land it with very little splash than you can if I'm, say, trying to skip a spinning rod. I have a lot less control in terms of what my bait is doing with a spinning rod. So I would agree with that. But again, it kind of comes down to the situation that you're in. If I'm fishing, a small stream where I'm wading and I'm fishing for trout and I've got, water up to my thighs, I can't underhand pitch as well as I could with a spinning rod. I can get the bait in a better position. I can cast it better with a spinning rod in that situation. If I'm on the front deck of my boat and I'm flipping it, shoreline cover, I can probably present the BFS system in a better manner, meaning more naturally than I could if I were trying to skip a spinning rod gear back in there. The same thing goes, a lot of the reason this has taken hold is because the trout people who like to fly fish have a lot of difficulty fly fishing in really tight, confined areas. So they were able to take the BFS system, present their baits in a similar manner as to how they were fly fishing, and they're getting their bait exactly where they need it, where they couldn't cast before because you had branches everywhere and tall grass and whatever it was. So there's major advantages, but it comes down to the situation that you're in. If you're talking about somebody who's just fishing in a boat, like they normally would, a BFS system is not any sort of giant improvement over spinning gear or normal bait casting gear. It comes down to the skill level of the angler. So do I think there's a place for BFS? Yeah, I absolutely do. Like, I think for those of you who don't like spinning gear, don't feel comfortable with it, it's a very, very good tactic. But for those of you, as an example, let's say I'm fishing a hump out in the middle of a lake, throwing a Ned head, a 1/20th ounce Ned head. So the bait weighs pretty much nothing. I don't personally see what the advantage of a bait caster is in that presentation as a spinning gear, because I can cast further with the spinning gear. I'm going to probably have the same amount of feel with the spinning gear as I would bait casting gear. And more importantly, one of the biggest issues that I have with the BFS system is I prefer the drag systems on spinning gear over bait casting gear. I think you're much more in tune and you understand what the fish is doing because the drags are better. In my opinion, the drags are better on spinning systems. So if I'm throwing light line, small gear, and I'm tangling with big fish, I'd rather have the better drag system of spinning gear than have the conventional bait casting, because I think people tend to break off more when they're throwing light line on bait casting gear for that reason. I realize that the rods are, medium light or ultralight rods, and that the reels are made to have sensitive gears or sensitive drags. The difference is you just know what's going on. You can hear the drag so much better in a spinning system than you can a bait caster. And maybe that's me personally. That's how I feel. So in a situation like that, I don't think there's a major advantage. If I'm going down a bank and I'm flipping under bushes, I can skip under those bushes just as well with a spinning rod. So again, I don't know that there's a huge advantage there. I think it comes down to the angler. I do have BFS tackle because it's something I was interested in. I wanted to try it because I've gotten so many people requesting my thoughts on it, but I haven't found it to be an advantage where I would even apply that in a tournament situation over my normal gear. And again, maybe that's just because I'm more comfortable with what I was doing already. But I don't have the issue of not being able to put small lures even on today's current bait casting gear. The reels that I use are high-end reels. The rods that I build are high-end rods, and I make sure that if I want to use light tackle, I pair it up right with the right rod and reel. Now, yes, I can downsize even more to BFS systems that would, allow me to fish even smaller items, but I just feel better throwing spinning gear. I think that's the way that I prefer, but that's me personally. It doesn't mean there's not a place for BFS. It just means for me at this point in my career, I'm not replacing my spinning rods with BFS systems. So I hope that doesn't offend any of you, because I know a lot of you are very, very hardcore BFS people, but I think a lot of that comes down to the fishing situations. I feel like the people that are really getting some of the advantages of the BFS system are fishing from the bank. They're fishing from shore, and they're in much more tighter fishing, tighter confounds, and it's easier for them to present the bait than try to handle spinning gear in those situations. But again, it comes down to the comfort level of the angler. So I hope this answers your question, guys. That's where I stand. I don't really have a strong opinion either way, other than for me, BFS is not necessarily the way I want to go. It's not going to replace my spinning gear at this point. So leave in the comment section if there are very specific things that you love about using the BFS system. Please put it in the comment section so that myself, as well as the other viewers, can read it, because maybe there's things that I haven't identified yet from my experience using them that really was a true advantage over current systems. So throw it in the comment section so that those of us can learn from you guys that are very hardcore BFS system guys. I'd love to read it. So thanks for watching, guys. Share those comments, hit the like button, and stay tuned for tomorrow's video.